The actual solar date that Srila Prabhupada left for America was August 13th, but today we're celebrating the Tithi. We're celebrating the Tithi, and then in 35 days, we'll also hear about Prabhupada's arrival in America. Abhay Charan De was born on September 1st, 1896, in an aristocratic Kayastha family in Calcutta, the capital of British India. He was educated at Scottish Church College, where he received an excellent education in English and Sanskrit. He was the leader amongst his friends. One day, a friend named Narendranath Mulak invites him to visit a saintly person whom he recently met at a nearby ashram, Prabhupada. Narendra Mulak was a very rich man, and he informed me that one very nice old sannyasi had come to his house and invited him to go to Ultadanga, where there was a Gaudiya Math. He said he wished to go there and asked me, "Why don't I come? Let us go together." He was my very intimate friend. At that time, I was a little pessimistic. I thought, I know all these sadhus, so I said, I'm not going. But he forced me. Why not? Come on. Finally, I told, let us go. So I went to see His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1922 in that Ultadanga building. At that time, Srila Prabhupada was sitting on the roof where there was a small room. We were welcomed there because Narendra Mulak was known to the devotees as a very rich man and had contributed some money. We went to see Prabhupada and offered our obeisances. Immediately, Prabhupada said to me, "Because you are an educated young man, why don't you preach Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message throughout the whole world?" I replied to him, "Sir, we are a dependent nation. Who will hear our message? We can talk about all of these things after we get independence." I was politically minded at that time, but he refuted my arguments. Certainly, I was defeated, and I took his words very seriously. I appreciated him. Then we were offered some prasadam and came down from there. My friend Narendra Mulak asked me, "How did you like this sadhu?" I said, "Yes, he is a sadhu in whose hands Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is there, and it will be done. It will be successfully preached." I think it was very nice. That was my appreciation. Then in 1923, I resigned my post at Bose's laboratory, and I accepted the agency for the whole of UP, beginning from the Mughal side up to New Delhi. I made my head office in Allahabad. I was always thinking that, yes, I have met a very nice sadhu. From the very beginning, that was my impression, that I had met a real sadhu. So actually, I perceived that the words, "Lavamatra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy," a moment's association with the pure devotee, can give all perfection, were real. I perceived that. I was impressed so much by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That impression continued with me. Yes, Guru Maharaj wanted that Mahaprabhu's message be preached abroad, and the Gaudiya Math people did not do anything. So I thought, let me try in this old age. This inspiration came to go to the West, and I went. And by His grace, it has become a little successful. That's all. I have no credit. It is all the blessings of Guru and Vaishnava. I did not know how things were happening. I am not at all a bona fide person. It is only through Charya Vaishnava Seva, Nishtara Payeche Keba. Without serving an ideal Vaishnava, who can be delivered from the clutches of Maya? In modern India, people want to copy the ways of the Western countries, such as Great Britain and America. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instructions were to preach Krishna consciousness around the world in the English language, If the Westerners take to Krishna consciousness, then India may better realize the importance of her own culture. One night, Abhay dreams of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati asking him to take sannyas. Becoming a sannyasi means spending all of one's time preaching Krishna consciousness on behalf of the spiritual master and Lord Chaitanya. Many years earlier, Abhay felt afraid when he first had a similar dream. Now, at 63 years old, he knows that the time is right. Abhay talks to his godbrother Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj about sannyas. He explains his desire to go to America and preach on behalf of their spiritual master. Keshav Maharaj offers Abhay sannyas initiation in the year 1959. Abhay is now called Bhaktivedanta Swami. He can now dedicate his entire life to preaching the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Vrindavan, he keeps a room at the Radha Damodar temple. There he writes and becomes inspired to bring Krishna consciousness to the West. He also rents a room at Chippiwara in New Delhi, where he prints Back to Godhead and preaches. He often travels back and forth on the train. In 1962, he gets a donation to print an English edition of the Srimad Bhagavatam and begins printing in Delhi. Every day he visits the printers, making sure that the book is coming out nicely. After a few years and much hard work, he is able to print 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is 1965, and Bhaktivedanta Swami is now 69 years old. Scholars all over India know his books. He feels it is time to travel to America, but he needs to find a way to get there. It had been more than 40 years since Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati asked him to preach Krishna consciousness in the West. At first it seemed impossible. Now he was free to travel. Srila Prabhupada, he says, I planned that I must go to America. Generally they go to London, but I did not want to go to London. I was simply thinking how to go to New York. I was scheming whether I shall go this way through Tokyo, Japan, or that way. Which way is cheaper? That was my proposal. And I was targeting to New York always. Sometimes I was dreaming that I have come to New York. Then he met Mr. Agarwal, a Mathura businessman, and mentioned to him that he wanted to go to the West. Although Mr. Agarwal had known Bhaktivedanta Swami for only a few minutes, he volunteered to try to get him a sponsor in America. It was something Mr. Agarwal had done a number of times when he met a sadhu who mentioned going abroad to teach Hindu culture. He would ask his son, an engineer in Pennsylvania, to send back a sponsorship form. When Mr. Agarwal volunteered to help in this way, Bhaktivedanta Swami urged him, please, to do so. Srila Prabhupada, I did not say anything seriously to Mr. Agarwal, but perhaps he took it very seriously. I asked him, well, why don't you ask your son Gopal to sponsor so that I can go there? I want to preach there. While in Delhi, to his surprise, he was contacted by the Ministry of External Affairs and informed that his no objection certificate for going to the US was ready. Since he had not instigated any proceedings for leaving the country, he had to inquire from the ministry about what had happened. They showed him the statutory declaration form signed by Mr. Gopal Agarwal of Butler, Pennsylvania. Mr. Agarwal solemnly declared that he would bear the expenses of Bhaktivedanta Swami during his stay in the US. Srila Prabhupada. Whatever the correspondence was there between father and son, I did not know. I simply asked him, why don't you ask your son Gopal to sponsor? And now, after 3 or 4 months, The no objection certificate was sent from the Indian consulate in New York to me. He had already sponsored my arrival there for 1 month, and all of a sudden, I got the paper. At his father's request, Gopal Agarwal had done as he had done for several other sadhus, none of whom had ever gone to America. It was just a formality, something to satisfy his father. Gopal had requested a form from the Indian consulate in New York, obtained a statement from his employer certifying his monthly salary, gotten a letter from his bank showing his balance as of April 1965, and had the form notarized. It had been stamped and approved in New York and sent to Delhi. Now Bhaktivedanta Swami had a sponsor, but he still needed a passport, visa, P-form, and travel fare. The passport was not very difficult to obtain, and by June 10th, he had his passport. Carefully, he penned in his address at the Radha Krishna temple in Chippiwada and wrote his father's name, Gaur Mahande. With his passport and sponsorship papers, he now went to Bombay. He wanted a ticket for America and approached Sumati Morarji. He showed his sponsorship papers to her secretary, Mr. Chokshi, who was impressed. He went to Mrs. Morarji on his behalf. The Swami from Vrindavan is here. He has a sponsor and he wants to go to America. He wants you to send him on a ship. Mrs. Morarji said no. The Swami was too old to go and expect to accomplish anything. She wanted him to stay in India and complete the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why go to the States? Finish the job here. But he was fixed on going. He coached Mr. Chokshi on what he should say. I find this gentleman very inspired to go and preach something to the people there. But she again said no. The Swami was not healthy. It would be too cold there. He might not be able to come back. People in America were not so cooperative, and they would probably not listen to him. Exasperated with Mr. Chokshi's ineffectiveness, he demanded a personal interview. It was granted, and he presented his request. Please give me 1 ticket. Sumati Morarji was concerned. Swamiji, you're so old. You're taking this responsibility. Do you think it is all right? He reassured her, lifting his hand, as if to reassure a doubting daughter. It is all right. But do you know what my secretaries think? They say Swamiji is going to die there. He made a face as if to dismiss a foolish rumor, and again insisted that she give him a ticket. All right, she said, get your P-form, and I will make an arrangement to send you by our ship. Bhaktivedanta Swami smiled brilliantly and happily left her offices, past her amazed and skeptical clerks. A P-form is another necessity for an Indian national who wants to leave the country. It is a certificate given by the State Bank of India, certifying that the person has no excessive debts in India and is cleared by the banks. That would take a while to obtain. And he also did not yet have a US visa. He needed to pursue these government permissions in Bombay, but he had no place to stay. So Mrs. Morarji agreed to let him reside at the Scindia colony, a compound of apartments for employees of the Scindia company. He stayed in a small, unfurnished apartment with only his trunk and typewriter. The resident Scindia employees all knew that Mrs. Morarji was sending him to the West, and some of them became interested in his cause. They were impressed, for although he was so old, he was going abroad to preach. He was a special sadhu, a scholar. They heard from him how he was taking hundreds of copies of his books with him, but no money. He became a celebrity at the Scindia colony. Every day he would go out trying to get his visa and P-form as quickly as possible, selling his books and seeking contacts and supporters for his future Srimad Bhagavatam publishing. One neighbor, Mr. Nagarajan, tried to help. Mrs. Nagarajan says, when he came home, we used to give him courage, and we used to tell him, Swamiji, one day you will achieve your target. He would say, time is still not right. Time is still not right. They are all agyanis. They don't understand, but still I must carry on. Sometimes I would go by and his chatter would be on the chair, but he would be sitting on the windowsill. I would ask him, Swamiji, did you have any good contacts? He would say, not much today. I didn't get much, and it is depressing. Tomorrow Krishna will give me more details. And he would sit there quietly. Bhaktivedanta Swami had a page printed entitled My Mission, and he would show it to influential men in his attempts to get further financing for Srimad Bhagavatam. Mrs. Morarji. He used to come in the evening and sing the verses in rhythmic tunes, as is usually done with the Bhagavatam. At certain points, when you sit and discuss, you raise so many points. He was commenting on certain points, but it was all from the Bhagavatam. So he used to sit and explain to me and then go. He could give time, and I could hear him. That was for about 10 or 15 days. His backing by Scindia and his sponsorship in the US were a strong presentation. And with the help of the people at Scindia, he obtained his visa on July 28, 1965. But the P-form proceedings went slowly and even threatened to be a last insurmountable obstacle. Srila Prabhupada. Formerly, there was no restriction for going outside. But for a sannyasi like me, I had so much difficulty obtaining the government permission to go out. I had applied for the P-form sanction, but no sanction was coming. Then I went to the State Bank of India. The officer told me, Swamiji, you are sponsored by a private man, so we cannot accept. If you were invited by some institution, then we could consider, but you were invited by a private man for 1 month. And after 1 month, if you are in difficulty, there will be so many obstacles. But I had already prepared everything to go. So I said, what have you done? He said, I have decided not to sanction your P-form. I said, no, don't do this. You better send me to your superior. It should not be like that. He took my request, and he sent the file to the chief official of foreign exchange. He was the supreme man in State Bank of India. I went to see him. I asked his secretary, do you have such and such a file? You kindly put it to Mr. Rao. I went to see him. I was waiting. Mr. Rao came personally. He said, Swamiji, I passed your case. Don't worry. Following Mrs. Morarji's instruction, her secretary, Mr. Chokshi, took him to buy a wool jacket and other woolen clothes. Mr. Chokshi spent about rupees 250 on new clothes, including some new dhotis. At Swamiji's request, Mr. Chokshi printed 500 copies of a small pamphlet containing Sri Shikshastakam and an advertisement for Srimad Bhagavatam, in the context of an advertisement for the Scindia Steamship Company. This is Prabhupada in his winter coat in New York. Mr. Chokshi, I asked him, why couldn't you go earlier? Why do you want to go now to the States at this age? He replied that, I will be able to do something good, I am sure. His idea was that someone should be there who would be able to go near people who were lost in life and teach them and tell them what the correct thing is. I asked him so many times, why do you want to go to the States? Why don't you start something in Bombay or Delhi or Vrindavan? I was teasing him also. You're interested in seeing the States, therefore you want to go. All Swamijis want to go to the States, and you want to enjoy there. He said, what have I got to see? I have finished my life. Finally, Mrs. Morarji scheduled a place for him on one of her ships, the Jaladuta, which was sailing from Calcutta on August 13th. She had made certain that he would travel on a ship whose captain understood the needs of a vegetarian and a Brahmin. Mrs. Morarji told the Jaladuta's captain, Arun Pandya, to carry extra vegetables and fruits for the Swami. Mr. Chokshi spent the last 2 days with Swamiji in Bombay, picking up the pamphlets at the press, purchasing clothes, and driving him to the station to catch the train for Calcutta. He arrived in Calcutta about 2 weeks before the Jaladuta's departure. Though he had lived much of his life in the city, he now had nowhere to stay. It was as he had written in his Vrindavan bhajan, I have my wife, sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but I have no money, so they are a fruitless glory. Although in this city he had been so carefully nurtured as a child, those early days were also gone forever. This is also from Vrindavan bhajan. Where have my loving father and mother gone to now? And where are all my elders, who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family life is a list of names. This is Srila Prabhupada and his brother at the death ceremony of his father, Gaur Mohan De. Out of the hundreds of people in Calcutta whom he knew, he chose to stay with Mr. Shishir Bhattacharya, a kirtan singer he had met at the governor's house in Lucknow. Mr. Bhattacharya was not a relative, disciple, or even a close friend, but he was willing to help. Swamiji called at his place and informed him that he would be leaving on a cargo ship in a few days. He needed a place to stay and he would like to give some lectures. Mr. Bhattacharya immediately began to arrange a few private meetings at friends' homes where he would sing and Swamiji would then speak. Mr. Bhattacharya thought the sadhus leaving for America should make an important news story, but none of the newspapers wrote anything. Finally, they visited the Dainik Bashumati, a local Bengali daily, which agreed to print a small article with Swamiji's picture. On August 6th, he traveled to Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Then he returned to Calcutta, where Mr. Bhattacharya continued to assist him with his final business and speaking engagements. Mr. Bhattacharya says, we just took a hired taxi to this place and that place, and he would go for preaching. I never talked to him during the preaching, but once, when I was coming back from the preaching, I crossed him in something or argued. Whenever we argued, then he was shouting. He was very furious. He said, you're always saying, I think, I think, I think. What is the importance of what you think? It matters what Shastra says. You must follow. You should forget your desire. You should change your habit. You follow what Shastra wants you to do and do it. I'm not telling you what I think, but I am repeating what the Shastra says. As the day of his departure approached, he took stock of his possessions. He had only a suitcase, an umbrella, and a supply of chira. He did not know what he would find to eat in America. Perhaps there would only be meat. If so, he was prepared to live on boiled potatoes and chira. His main baggage, several trunks of his books, was being handled separately by Scindia Cargo. 200 3-volume sets. The very thought of the books gave him confidence. To be poor and unknown in India was one thing. A sannyasi was respected. The Srimad Bhagavatam was respected. But in America, it would be different. He would be no one, a foreigner. And there was no tradition of sadhus, no temples, no free ashrams. But when he thought of the books he was bringing, he became confident. When he met someone in America, he would give them a flyer, Srimad Bhagavatam, India's message of peace and goodwill. So you maybe can't see it from here, but this was the pamphlet that Prabhupada had Mr. Chokshi print, 500 copies. And it was dual purpose. It was for Prabhupada's mission, and at the same time was an advertisement for the Scindia steamship company. On August 13th, he departed from India. The Hindu tradition was that a sannyasi should not cross the ocean and go to the land of the Mlechas. But beyond all that was the desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and his desire was non-different from that of Lord Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had predicted that the chanting of Hare Krishna would be known in every town and village of the world. He took a taxi to the Calcutta port, where several friends and his son Vrindavan saw him off. He was carrying a Bengali copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he intended to read during the crossing. Somehow he would be able to cook on board, or if not, he could starve, whatever Krishna desires. He checked his essentials: passenger ticket, passport, visa, P-form, sponsor's address. Finally, it was happening. Srila Prabhupada says, "With what great difficulty I got out of the country. Some way or other, by Krishna's grace, I got out so I could spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Otherwise, to remain in India, it was impossible. I wanted to start a movement in India, but I was not at all encouraged. For thousands of years, Krishna Bhakti had been known only in India, not outside, except in twisted, faithless descriptions by foreigners. The only swamis to have reached America had been non-devotees and Mayavadi impersonalists. But now Krishna was sending Bhaktivedanta Swami as his emissary." The Jaladuta is a regular cargo carrier of the Scindia Steam Navigation Company, but there is a passenger cabin aboard. During the voyage from Calcutta to New York in August and September of 1965, the cabin was occupied by Sri Abhay Charan Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami, whose age was listed as 69 and who was taken on board bearing a complimentary ticket with food. That's what's written there in the parentheses. This is Prabhupada's ticket, free ticket. The Jaladuta, under the command of Captain Arun Pandya, whose wife was also aboard, left at 9 a.m. on Friday, August 13th. In his diary, Srila Prabhupada noted, "The cabin is quite comfortable, thanks to Lord Sri Krishna for enlightening Sumati Morarji for all these arrangements. I am quite comfortable." But on August 14th, he reported seasickness, dizziness, vomiting, Bay of Bengal, heavy rains, more sickness. On August 19th, the ship arrived at Colombo, Sri Lanka. There, Prabhupada was able to get relief from his seasickness. The captain took him ashore, and he traveled around Colombo by car. Then the ship went on to Cochin. Jamashtami was on August 20th, and Prabhupada spoke to the crew about Lord Krishna and distributed prasadam he had cooked himself. August 21st was his 70th birthday, observed, without ceremony, at sea. That same day, the ship arrived at Cochin, and Srila Prabhupada's trunks of Srimad Bhagavatam, which had been shipped from Bombay, were loaded on board. By the 23rd, the ship started for the Red Sea, where Srila Prabhupada encountered great difficulty. He noted in his diary, rain, seasickness, dizziness, headache, no appetite, vomiting. It was more than seasickness. The pains in his chest made him think he would die at any moment. In 2 days, he suffered 2 heart attacks. He tolerated the difficulty, meditating on the purpose of his mission. But after 2 days of such violent attacks, he thought that if another were to come, he would certainly not survive. On the night of the 2nd day, Prabhupada had a dream. Lord Krishna, in his many forms, was rowing a boat, and he told Prabhupada that he should not fear, but should come along. Prabhupada felt assured of Lord Krishna's protection, and the violent attacks did not recur. The Jaladuta entered the Suez Canal on September 1st and stopped in Port Said, Egypt, on the 2nd. Srila Prabhupada visited the city with the captain and said that he liked it. By the 6th, he had recovered a little from his illness and was eating regularly again for the first time in 2 weeks. Having cooked his own khichdi and puri, he reported in his diary that his strength renewed little by little. Thursday, September 9th. We have crossed over the Atlantic Ocean for 24 hours. The whole day was clear and almost smooth. I am taking my food regularly and have got some strength to struggle. There is also a slight tacking of the ship, and I am feeling a slight headache also. But I am struggling, and the nectarine of life is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the source of all my vitality. Friday, September 10th. Today the ship is plying very smoothly. I feel better today. But I am feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan and my lords, Sri Govinda, Gopinath, Radha Damodar. The only solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which I am tasting the nectarine of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. I have left Bharat Bhumi just to execute the order of Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but have taken up the risk just to carry out the order of His divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy, so far away from Vrindavan. Mrs. Pandya, the captain's wife, whom Srila Prabhupada considered to be an intelligent and learned lady, foretold Srila Prabhupada's fortune. If he were to pass beyond this crisis in his health, she said, it would indicate the goodwill of Lord Krishna. The Jaladuta voyage was calm. In fact, the captain said that never in his entire career had he seen such a calm Atlantic crossing. Prabhupada replied that the calmness was Lord Krishna's mercy, and Mrs. Pandya asked Prabhupada to come back with them so that they might have another such crossing. Srila Prabhupada wrote in his diary, "If the Atlantic would have shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. But Lord Krishna has taken charge of the ship." On September 13th, Prabhupada noted in his diary, 32nd day of journey, cooked bhatti khichdi. It appeared to be delicious, so I was able to take some food. Today I have disclosed my mind to my companion, Lord Sri Krishna. There is a Bengali poem made by me in this connection. This is the translation to the bhajan that was sung this morning. I emphatically say to you, O brother, you will obtain your good fortune only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was very dear to Lord Gauranga, the son of Mother Sachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He is that great saintly spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna at different places throughout the world. By his strong desire, the holy name of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries in the Western world, in all the cities, towns, and villages on the earth. From all the oceans, seas, rivers, and streams, everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. This picture is one of the early Mayapur festivals, where we had about 28 sannyasis there. Prabhupada's very happy. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. When all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy, the Vaishnava's desire is then fulfilled. Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I am begging for your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all. If you bestow your power, by serving the spiritual master, one attains the absolute truth. One's life becomes successful. If that service is obtained, then one becomes happy and gets your association due to good fortune. This is spoken by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, when Nrsingadev offered him a benediction, and Prahlad Maharaj simply took shelter of his spiritual master Narada Muni. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant Narada Muni kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? O Lord Krishna, you are my eternal companion. Forgetting you, I have suffered the kicks of Maya, birth after birth. If today the chance to meet you occurs again, then I will surely be able to rejoin you. My dear friend, in your company I will experience great joy once again. In the early morning I will wander about the cowherd pastures and fields. Running and frolicking in the many forests of Braja, I will roll on the ground in spiritual ecstasy. Oh, when will that day be mine? Today that remembrance of you came to me in a very nice way. Because I have a great longing, I called to you. I am your eternal servant, and therefore I desire your association so much. O Lord Krishna, except for you, there is no other means of success. On September 28, 2021, we will celebrate Srila Prabhupada's arrival in America. On the strength of his spiritual master's order, he left Vrindavan to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna worldwide. We will hear further of his adventures and appreciate how much effort he took to establish the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. That's all. So, Prahlad Maharaj, when did he meet his spiritual master? He was still in the womb when he received instructions from his spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada, as he explained, as a young man, he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he explained, only about 5 or 6 times in his lifetime. But each time he met him, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati encouraged him to preach Krishna consciousness in the Western world. That was his first instruction to Prabhupada in 1922, and his final instruction to Prabhupada just a fortnight before he left this world. So Srila Prabhupada, merely on the strength of his spiritual master's order, was able to give up everything, take sannyas, leave his motherland, which was Bharat Bhumi, go to a completely unknown, hostile world, and preach Krishna consciousness all alone. Now, that confidence came entirely from his spiritual master from within his heart. So each one of us, as just little, tiny little particles of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, he would say that you have all been sent by my spiritual master to assist me. Because his one contemplation was, how can I fulfill the order of my spiritual master? So we should take that same mood. Now, while Prabhupada was trying to fulfill the order of his spiritual master, and there was no guarantee of success, he suffered intensely in America, not just only 2 heart attacks, then he had a brain stroke. So that determination, and at the same time, when Prabhupada revealed his heart, he was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, no friends, no family, nothing. On all sides, everywhere, Prabhupada compared the ocean to the material ocean, the Bhava Sindhu, because you don't see any shoreline in the ocean. So there only, he revealed his heart to his Supreme Lord Krishna, how he longed again to be with Krishna in his rasa, as he described here. But that didn't stop him from taking all risks to carry out the order of his spiritual master. So let us take that inspiration, keep our spiritual master's instructions in our heart, and make that our very life and soul, so that in our last breath, just as Srila Prabhupada did here in Vrindavan, we were still trying to carry out that order. If anyone has any questions? All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.